Hello, I'm Jay and welcome to my channel where I talk about and rate all kinds of books without sorting them into worthy or unworthy piles. If you're someone who will pick up a messy romance one day and a dense literary novel the next, or if you like forming your own opinions regardless of the hype, then you're in the right place. This is my June wrap up where I'll be talking through the 15 books I read across many genres, from dark romance to lit fic to sci-fi. But before I jump in, I wanted to say something I've been thinking about lately. I've seen a lot of pessimistic takes floating around, things like all books are bad now, or that book talk and book influencers have ruined reading. Personally, I don't agree with this. Probably obvious since I do have a channel that mostly talks about books. I like to think that we're smarter than that theory. Most of us know how to read critically and decide what hits for us personally. Sometimes that's a beautifully written book. Sometimes it's a chaotic, over-the-top romance that's just pure fun. And both are valid. If you've got thoughts on this trend, or if you'd want to see a video where I read a bunch of so-called mid books everyone's been hating on, drop a comment down below and let me know. All right, so let's get into my June reads. Out of these 15 books, only 3 of them are physical books that I own. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. So most of these are books that I got through my library or through KU. Okay, let's start with Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. This was my unexpected gateway into dark romance this month. I kept seeing this one everywhere and I finally gave in, even though it's not my usual thing. The premise is a lot. Allie, a trauma nurse, sends a suggestive comment to a masked thirst trap, her words, influencer. And next thing you know, he shows up at her house. It's spicy, it's outlandish, and there's a surprisingly tense subplot here that's not even mentioned in the blurb. So I won't spoil it. It was completely ridiculous, but weirdly captivating. I devoured it in maybe a sitting or two and found myself kind of hooked on the vibe, which kicked off a whole streak of books in this genre for me this month. It wasn't a new favorite, but it definitely did hook me. I gave this one 3 stars. Next up, I read Praise by Sarah Kate. It's the first book in the Salacious Players Club series, and I kind of do get the hype here. It's not deep, but the chemistry here was on point. This story follows a young gal reeling from her last relationship who ends up working for and getting involved with her ex's dad, who also happens to be her new boss and the owner of a sex club. It's completely over the top, but somehow Kate makes it work. This book really drew me into the world. Even though I'm not very far into the series, I can see why many people said that this one was their favorite. I gave it 3.25 stars. I've said this before, yes, sometimes you need 1/4 of a star. Okay, on to Creep by Emma Van Straten. I mentioned this one in one of my TBR videos. I feel like I've had many of them because summer TBR, June TBR, just so many TBRs. So with this one, here we are pivoting into the deeply uncomfortable. It's about a woman named Alice who's been cleaning the same man's apartment for a year, secretly, in that, of course, he knows she's doing it, but none of the people in her life do. And during which she slowly becomes completely obsessed with him, imagining a relationship that doesn't exist. It starts quietly, even slowly, but once it grabs hold, it does not let go. I was horrified and completely gripped with this one. It's the kind of book that dares you to keep reading even as you cringe your way through it. If you're okay sitting in discomfort and don't need your characters to be redeemable, this one's incredibly well done. This got 4 stars from me. Next, I read Eyes on Me by Sarah Kate. So this is the second book in the Salacious Players Club series. And honestly, I like this one just a little bit more than the first. It dives deeper into the characters' backstories, especially our male lead, who unexpectedly ends up watching his stepsister on a camgirl app. You heard me correctly. The setup is messy, but the emotional deep dive really worked for me here. I appreciated the depression representation of all things. It was done in a way that felt surprisingly thoughtful. After this one, I did need a bit of a breather from this world, but I do plan to keep going with the series. In fact, little secret, I've already read the third book and that'll be in my July wrap up. These have been great in between reads, palette cleansers, shall we say, when I'm at risk of slipping into a slump, not just a reading slump, but just a life slump. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Okay, next I read the second book in, I'm not sure what the series name is, but the first is Lights Out, second is Caught Up by Navessa Allen. Unfortunately, this one did not work for me at all. I couldn't get into the romance. I didn't buy the chemistry at all. And I ended up skimming all of the steamy scenes. And no, I won't pretend like I normally do that. The banter between the main character and her roommates felt like it was trying way too hard to be funny, and it fell flat. And I found myself rolling my eyes at everything from the weak plot twists to the use of the name Junior for our male interest. Yeah, this one was a miss. I gave it 2 stars only because for the first half, I legitimately thought this book had potential. Okay, so the next book that I read was Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. I've mentioned this author a couple times. She's a new find for me and I'm really enjoying her books. And this was such a refreshing shift from everything I'd been reading to this point. It follows Nora, a romance screenwriter whose messy divorce ends up inspiring the best script of her life. So good that it gets picked up for a film adaptation shot at her own house. What follows is a very unexpected, charming entanglement with the actor who's playing her husband. The setup is kind of peak rom-com, but there's something grounded and grown up about it too. I've found this with her other book that I read as well, Summer Romance, I believe it was called. This one I read in a single evening because I had to know what was going to happen. It's heartfelt, it's bingeable, and the third act twist actually made me gasp. Even if it did sort of annoy me, I really liked it. So I ended up giving this one 4.25 stars. Next is a book that I featured on my Read It or Unhaul It video, where I have owned this book for a very long time and it just sat collecting dust on my shelves. This book is massive. These are like Bible thin pages, so you can't even understand what you're getting yourself into until it's too late. Yeah, so at almost 900 pages, I can say I never truly wanted to put it down. It is a sprawling sci-fi about a xenobiologist who stumbles on an alien artifact and accidentally becomes fused with it, just as intergalactic war kicks off. It has a classic space opera feel, but with some surprising character intimacy too. I especially loved Captain Falcone. I mentioned this in my mid-year book freakout tag video, that he is my new book crush. That said, this book definitely could have been trimmed down. I kept thinking how much more impactful it would have been if Pellini would have cut it down by about 150 pages at least. And for that reason, I gave it 4 stars. Next is another one that I mentioned in my Read It or Unhaul It video, and that is Untold Night and Day by Bei Sua. This is one of those books that I really wanted to understand. It's experimental, it's dreamlike, and deeply disorienting in a way that is intentional. The story follows a woman wandering through Seoul over the course of one very strange, fragmented day and night, and it leans into surrealism hard. There were moments I felt totally immersed in the atmosphere, and other moments I felt completely lost. I admire what it was doing, but by the end, my main reaction was honestly just, huh? I gave it 2 stars. Okay, on to something much more fun and light. Hi, Editing Jay from the future here. I'm not sure how I managed to do this, but I went on to talk about this book like I'd introduced it when I hadn't. So here I'm about to talk about Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. And back to the video. This one falls squarely in the entertaining but didn't emotionally connect category. for me. It's a brother's best friend age gap romance set against a very idyllic Sicilian village backdrop. So the vibes are definitely strong. I would highly recommend this as a summer read. I did like the main character quite a lot. She had this funny, grounded personality that worked well with Hazelwood's style, but the romance didn't fully click for me here. And I honestly found myself a little indifferent by the end. So I gave it 3 stars. Okay, this next one was so anticipated by me. I actually put off reading it for weeks after I got it. I'm so sorry to whoever was waiting on me to return it to Libby while I did this, but has there ever been a book where you're just like, you have such high hopes for it, you're scared it's gonna let you down? Well, that was this book for me, and that is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was my favorite book of the month. I'll just spoil that now. It follows Joan, a physics professor who gets the once-in-a-lifetime chance to train as one of NASA's first female astronauts in the 1980s. I was instantly drawn to the characters, Joan especially, but also the whole cast of hopeful, complicated men and women navigating love, ambition, and even grief. My one small gripe here is that I wanted more of the space program. Reid kind of fast forwards through it to focus more on the emotional fallout, which is very her, but a little frustrating when you're hoping for the full astronaut experience. Still, this one really worked for me. I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Following this one, I read Polybius by Colin Armstrong. This had such a strong setup. A mysterious arcade game appears in a coastal town in the early 80s. The 80s again. I love the 80s. And strange, violent behavior starts to spread like a virus. I loved the retro vibes in this one and the urban legend premise. But unfortunately, the execution just didn't work for me. The writing felt flat, the characters were underdeveloped, and the tension never built the way I wanted it to. Even during the most chaotic moments, I found myself completely bored. I gave it 1.5 stars. I wish I could say the next book was better, especially given the author, but it wasn't, and that is With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. This one really let me down. It's set on a luxury train in the 1950s where a woman is plotting revenge against the people who wronged her family. But then naturally someone turns up dead and, surprise, there's a murderer on board. This should have been a fun, twisty read, but instead I found myself totally checked out. The characters were forgettable, the mystery didn't grab me, and it seriously lacked any spark at all. I gave this one 1.5 stars. Next, I continued on with a long-standing series, and that is Releasing 10 by Chloe Walsh, which is part of the Boys of Tommen series. Book 7, I believe. No, 6. Book 6. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 6. I went into this one with lower expectations because I really didn't vibe with Taming 7 at all. So this one is Lizzie and Hugh's love story, part 1. And I was not a fan of Lizzie as a side character going into this book. And I also didn't care much about Hugh either. But somehow Chloe Walsh won me over. This goes back to Lizzie and Hugh's early years. I'm talking really early. Like I think we start when Lizzie's like a toddler. And I actually did end up enjoying learning about her childhood. And it really fleshes out who they are and why they are the way that they are. And even though the content was incredibly dark, like disturbingly so, I found myself completely invested in their story. It has heart, it has pain, and it really did, like I said, help me understand the characters that I'd previously written off. I did end up giving this one 4 stars. I didn't like it as much as the first 4 books in the series, but it definitely was better than Taming 7. Okay, the second to last book that I read in the month of June was one that I found kind of by accident when I was looking for another book on Libby, and that is My Fault by Mercedes Ron. Now, I had seen this movie thumbnail on Amazon Prime I don't know how many times and was just not interested. And it took me a little bit to connect the two, but this book inspired that movie, or that movie was based on this book. So I was kind of into this one at first. It had that guilty pleasure energy. It was messy, dramatic, and a bit mysterious. It follows Noah, a girl who moves to LA with her mom after her mom remarries, and she ends up falling for her new stepbrother who's into street racing and secret fights. Truthfully, it was giving a little bit of Beautiful Disaster now that I think about it. I should mention, I did not like A Beautiful Disaster. I really did not like that book. So that might be why I didn't like this book. Also, the second half of this book completely went off the rails. The plot gets wild in like an unbelievable way. And the writing, I can't remember this verbatim, but there was a sentence that was something like, he dropped his shirt to the floor sexily. I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt and say maybe this was like a lost in translation thing. But overall, I didn't enjoy this one. I gave it 2.5 stars, so better than With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. Can you believe that? Okay, last. This one, I have seen a lot of commentary on everything from was this written by AI to who is the real author behind this book, because it is a pen name and we don't know who the real author is. And that is Silver Elite by Danny Francis. I kind of thought that I was going to hate this after everything I was seeing, but I ended up being pleasantly surprised. It's a dystopian fantasy where psychically modified individuals are hunted by the established regime, and our FMC Ren gets pulled into enemy territory and has to hide in plain sight. I thought the world building was a little lacking, but the pacing kept me hooked. I feel like it is fair to compare this one to Fourth Wing, minus the dragons, which that one I thought was okay, but knew after the first book I wouldn't be continuing with the series. This one I probably will continue with. And I kind of wish I knew I was getting myself into a series with this one. I got it as my book of the month when there was really very little information on it. I truthfully did not even know this was going to be a series, and now I guess I'm kind of hooked. Okay, so I gave this one 3.5 stars. So that's everything that I read in June. Some hits, some flops, and some that totally caught me off guard. If you've read any of these, or if something I mentioned stood out to you, please let me know in the comments. I really do love hearing other perspectives, especially when we don't see the book the same way. I think that's part of what makes a community like this a lot of fun. If you're also trying to find your own rhythm in reading, not necessarily chasing numbers or trends, just figuring out what clicks, I hope that you'll stick around. I've got more videos coming soon, from vlogs to book hauls to whatever I feel like filming. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon in the next video. Bye!